Tommy Trip Harrison earned his nickname the hard way. 3 weeks into his first semester at the Galactic Defense Academy, he'd already walked into more walls than most cadets did in their entire 4-year program. The nickname stuck after he somehow managed to trip over his own shadow during the opening ceremony, taking down half the honor guard in the process. Harrison. Sergeant Krex's voice boomed across the training deck, all 4 of his muscular arms crossed in disgust. The reptilian drill instructor had scales that changed color based on his mood, and right now they were a lovely shade of I want to eat my own tail. Explain to me how you managed to shoot yourself with a stun rifle that wasn't even turned on. Tommy looked down at the weapon in his hands, then at the scorch mark on his boot, then back at Sergeant Krex. Well, sir, I was trying to demonstrate proper firing stance, and then I sort of pivoted, and somehow the safety engaged, which made me jump, which caused me to pull the trigger, which apparently wasn't actually safe because... Stop. Krex held up all 4 hands. Just stop talking before you hurt yourself again. From across the training deck, Captain Rex Sterling executed a perfect combat roll, came up firing, and hit 6 targets in rapid succession. His blonde hair didn't even get mussed. Of course it didn't. Rex Sterling probably had a personal grooming droid hidden in his perfect jawline. Now that, Krex said, pointing at Sterling with 2 of his arms while the other 2 rubbed his temples, is what a soldier looks like. Take notes, Harrison. Tommy fumbled for his tablet and promptly dropped it. The device clattered across the floor and somehow activated the emergency alarm system. Red lights flashed as a computerized voice announced, "Hull breach detected. Initiating lockdown procedures." "That's not even possible," muttered Zara Volt from behind her towering stack of technical manuals. Tommy's best friend was a pale, scrawny genius who could hack into alien defense networks, but couldn't figure out how to tie her own shoelaces. The emergency system isn't connected to the training equipment. It's literally impossible to trigger it by dropping a... Nothing is impossible when Harrison's involved, Krex interrupted, his scales shifting to a resigned purple. I've seen him break the laws of physics just by walking into a room. 20 minutes later, after the emergency teams had figured out that no, the academy wasn't actually under attack, Tommy found himself sitting in the cafeteria with Zara. She was picking at her synthy protein while running calculations on 3 different tablets. "The combat assessment is in 2 days, she said without looking up. "I've run the projections. Based on your current performance metrics, you have a 0.3% chance of passing." "That's better than last week?" Tommy offered hopefully. "Last week you had a 0.5% chance. Zara finally looked at him, her dark eyes serious behind thick glasses. "Tommy, we need to face reality. You're going to get assigned to sanitation duty. Do you know what that means?" "I get to keep the academy clean?" "You get to clean the waste recycling systems for the rest of your career. On mining asteroids, with no breathable atmosphere." Tommy stared at his lunch, which stared back. The Academy's synthy food was notorious for its uncanny resemblance to actual living organisms. "Maybe I could transfer to the diplomatic corps?" "You once accidentally declared war on the Centauri Republic during a language class." "That was a misunderstanding about conjugated verbs." "You told their ambassador that his mother was a space whale." Tommy slumped in his chair. Across the cafeteria, Rex Sterling was holding court at a table full of admiring cadets, probably regaling them with tales of his perfect marksmanship scores and flawless tactical analyses. "I just don't understand it," Tommy said. "My dad was a war hero. My mom was a decorated admiral. My sister commands her own battlecruiser. I should be good at this." Zara's fingers flew across her tablet. "According to your genetic profile, you should be an exceptional soldier. Your family's military record goes back 12 generations. Your DNA shows markers for enhanced reflexes, tactical intelligence, and something called a berserker gene, whatever that means." "Well, clearly the tests were wrong." "Galactic genetic analysis doesn't make mistakes, Tommy. The scanners are accurate to 6 decimal places." "Then why can't I hit the broadside of a space station?" Before Zara could answer, The cafeteria's emergency broadcast system crackled to life. All cadets report to battle stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Tommy looked at Zara. Zara looked at Tommy. Did you do something? She asked. I've been sitting here the whole time. That's never stopped you before. The Apex Consortium chose the absolute worst possible moment to launch their surprise attack on Earth's most prestigious military academy. Tommy was in the middle of his pre-combat assessment panic attack, hyperventilating into a paper bag behind the gymnasium, when the first wave of alien fighters screamed overhead. This is just perfect, he wheezed, watching through the window as sleek black warships descended from the clouds like mechanical vultures. I'm about to fail the most important test of my life, and now we're being invaded. The Apex Consortium had a reputation throughout the galaxy as the ultimate warriors. They were 8-foot-tall humanoids with obsidian skin, glowing red eyes, and a cultural philosophy that boiled down to might makes right, and we have lots of might. Their ships looked like they'd been designed by someone who really liked sharp edges and intimidation. Tommy's communicator buzzed. All cadets to the main assembly hall immediately. Combat protocols are now in effect. He stumbled through the corridors, dodging panicked students and stern-faced instructors. The academy's defense shields flickered overhead, casting everything in an eerie blue glow. By the time he reached the assembly hall, it was packed with cadets in various states of terror and excitement. Commandant Torres stood at the podium, her weathered face grim. Ladies, gentlemen, and assorted species, we are under attack by the Apex Consortium. Their leader, War-Prime Vex'tor, has issued a challenge. The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the lead Apex vessel. War-Prime Vex'tor filled the frame, and Tommy had to admit the guy was impressively terrifying. His obsidian skin seemed to absorb light, his red eyes burned like coals, and his voice sounded like gravel being crushed by a freight train. Pathetic humans, Vex'tor growled, your species talks much of honor and courage, yet you hide behind shields and cry for mercy. I offer you a chance to prove your worth. Send forth your finest warrior for single combat. If they can defeat me, we will withdraw. If not. He smiled, revealing teeth that belonged on a shark. We will demonstrate why the Apex Consortium rules this galaxy. The assembly hall erupted in murmurs and nervous chatter. Tommy tried to make himself smaller in his seat, which was a challenge since he was already practically cowering behind Zara. Well, Commandant Torres said, it seems we need a volunteer. Before anyone could think too hard about it, Rex Sterling stood up. Of course he did. His perfect chin caught the light as he strode confidently toward the podium. I'll do it, ma'am, Sterling declared, his voice carrying easily through the hall. It's what I've trained for my entire life. A ripple of applause swept through the assembled cadets. Tommy had to admit, if anyone could take on an 8-foot-tall alien killing machine, it was Rex Sterling. The guy had never lost a combat simulation, never scored below perfect on any assessment, and probably practiced his heroic speeches in the mirror every morning. 20 minutes later, they were all gathered around viewing screens, watching Sterling get systematically dismantled by War-Prime Vex'tor in what could generously be called a fight. Sterling lasted exactly 37 seconds, which was actually impressive considering Vex'tor seemed to be toying with him for most of it. Pathetic, Vex'tor's voice boomed across the Academy's communication system. Is this truly the best your species can offer? Send me another, or prepare for conquest. The silence in the assembly hall was deafening. Tommy was trying to think of somewhere to hide when Commandant Torres spoke again. We need another volunteer. More silence. Tommy noticed that everyone seemed to be looking at their shoes with remarkable intensity. Anyone? Tommy had spotted a supply closet near the back of the hall and was carefully making his way toward it when disaster struck. As usual, it was his own fault. He tripped over absolutely nothing, windmilled his arms to keep his balance, accidentally knocked over a maintenance cart, and somehow triggered the room's emergency lighting system. In the sudden chaos of flashing red lights, Tommy bolted for the supply closet. Unfortunately, in his panic, he ran straight into Sergeant Krex. "Where are you going, Harrison?" the four-armed instructor demanded. "Nowhere, sir. Just looking for cleaning supplies?" "Outstanding initiative, Cadet. The Academy needs soldiers who think on their feet." Before Tommy could explain that he was actually thinking with his feet, specifically about how fast they could carry him away from danger, Krex's powerful arms had grabbed him and were propelling him toward the front of the hall. "I present our next volunteer," Krex announced, Cadet Tommy Harrison. The assembly hall erupted in confused murmurs. Tommy tried to protest, but Krex's grip was surprisingly strong, and somehow he found himself standing next to Commandant Torres, blinking in the spotlights like a deer caught in headlights. A very confused, very terrified deer. "Sir, I think there's been a misunderstanding," Tommy started. "Nonsense," Torres said, though she looked about as confident as someone who'd just volunteered to juggle live grenades. "Every cadet at this academy is trained for combat." From the main screen, War-Prime Vex'tor's laughter echoed through the hall. This is your champion. He looks like he might faint from fear." "I might," Tommy whispered. "What was that, Cadet?" "I said, I might surprise you, sir." Vex'tor's red eyes glowed brighter. "Indeed, I am curious to see how quickly this one breaks." Being dragged to what was essentially his own execution gave Tommy plenty of time to contemplate his life choices. Unfortunately, most of those choices seemed to involve falling down, breaking things, or accidentally insulting alien diplomats. "There has to be some kind of mistake," he pleaded with the security escort leading him to the Academy's main arena. "I'm not a fighter. I'm barely a functional human being. Last week I got beaten up by a door." It was an automatic door. Zara's voice crackled through his communicator. She'd managed to hack into the security channel, because of course she had. And technically you ran into it. That's not helping. The arena was a massive circular chamber with transparent aluminum walls that could supposedly withstand a direct hit from a plasma cannon. Tommy hoped they'd been stress-tested recently, because he had a feeling they were about to find out exactly how strong they were. War-Prime Vex'tor was already waiting in the center of the arena, and up close he was even more terrifying. His obsidian skin seemed to drink in the light. His red eyes tracked Tommy's movement like a predator sizing up prey, and his muscles looked like they'd been carved from granite by someone with serious anger issues. "So Vex'tor rumbled, 'The humans send me a child? How disappointing.'" Tommy opened his mouth to agree, then realized that probably wasn't the best strategy. "Actually, sir, I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. I'm not supposed to be here. I was trying to hide in a supply closet when—" "Hiding?" Vex'tor's laugh was like an avalanche made of contempt. "How perfectly human. Your species speaks of honor and courage, yet when faced with true warriors, you cower and flee." "Well, yes, but that's because we're not stupid," Tommy said, then immediately wished he hadn't. "I mean, tactically speaking, sometimes retreat is the better." Silence. Vex'tor's roar echoed through the arena. "You dare lecture me on tactics? I have conquered 17 star systems, but I have crushed the finest warriors of a dozen species. And you are nothing but a frightened whelp who soils himself at the first sign of danger." Tommy glanced down. "Actually, I think I'm okay on that front. For now." Through the transparent walls, he could see the assembled cadets, instructors, and what looked like half the galaxy's news media. The fight was being broadcast live across every major communication network. Great. He was about to become the most publicly humiliated person in galactic history. Tommy, Zara's voice whispered through his earpiece. "I'm in the Academy's main computer. I'm trying to find anything, that might help you. Unless you can hack Vex'tor's brain and make him forget how to fight, I don't think." "Your genetic profile," Zara interrupted excitedly. "Tommy, according to your DNA analysis, you have dormant genes linked to something called Berserker syndrome. It's some kind of combat enhancement that—" I don't care if I have the genetic code for growing wings, Tommy hissed. I'm about to be turned into paste by an 8-foot-tall murder machine. Vex'tor had been pacing in a circle, but now he stopped and fixed Tommy with those burning red eyes. Are you quite finished with your pathetic whimpering? I grow bored of this charade. Look, seriously, can we just call this whole thing off? Maybe we could arm wrestle instead? Or play a nice game of cards? The time for words has ended. Vex'tor's massive hands flexed, and Tommy noticed that each finger ended in what looked suspiciously like a razor-sharp claw. Prepare yourself, human. Try to die with some measure of dignity. Tommy looked around the arena desperately. Okay, but just so we're clear, when you inevitably kill me, could you maybe make it quick? And if possible, could you avoid the face? My mom's probably watching, and she's already disappointed enough. Enough. Vex'tor's bellow shook the arena walls. Face me, coward, or I will hunt down every member of your pathetic species and show them the true meaning of fear. Something in that threat penetrated Tommy's panic. His family, his friends, Zara, sitting somewhere in the stands, probably frantically trying to hack reality itself to save his worthless hide. All of them would suffer, because he was too scared to even try. Tommy straightened up, surprised by his own voice when he spoke. You know what? You're absolutely right. I am a coward. I am pathetic. I probably shouldn't even be here. He paused, looking directly into Vex'tor's glowing eyes. But I'm still going to try to kick your ass. The words were barely out of his mouth when he realized he'd just challenged the most dangerous warrior in the galaxy to a fight. In 3 different alien languages, no less, because apparently his mouth had decided to get creative with the universal translator. Vex'tor's expression shifted from contempt to genuine surprise, then back to murderous glee. Finally, some spirit. This may be entertaining after all. Tommy gulped. I immediately regret everything I just said. Too late for regrets, little human. Let us begin. The fight began exactly the way Tommy expected it would, with him flying through the air like a ragdoll launched from a catapult. Vex'tor had moved faster than Tommy's eyes could follow. One moment the War-Prime was standing 15 feet away. The next moment a fist the size of a small planet was connecting with Tommy's chest. The impact sent him sailing across the arena to crash into the far wall, with a sound like a small building collapsing. Tommy slid down the wall and landed in a heap, his vision swimming with stars and small cartoon birds. Okay, he wheezed. That could have gone better. Is that it? Vex'tor called out, not even breathing hard. The mighty human warrior defeated with a single blow? How tedious. Tommy struggled to his feet, his ribs screaming in protest. Through the transparent walls, he could see the spectators watching in horrified fascination. Some of them had already started placing bets on how long he'd last. The current odds weren't in his favor. Come now, human, Vex'tor continued, stalking across the arena with the casual confidence of a predator who knew his prey was already dead. Surely you can provide more entertainment than this. Your species has such a reputation for tenacity. Right, Tommy muttered, stumbling away from the wall. Tenacity. I can do tenacious. His strategy, if it could be called that, consisted entirely of running away while apologizing profusively. Sorry. So sorry. This is all a big misunderstanding. Maybe we could discuss this over coffee? Vex'tor's response was to leap forward with another devastating punch that would have taken Tommy's head clean off if he hadn't tripped over his own feet at exactly the right time. A moment. The War-Prime's fist whistled through the air where Tommy's face had been a split second earlier. Stop moving. Vex'tor snarled. I'm not doing it on purpose. Tommy protested, scrambling away on all fours. I just have really bad coordination. What followed was less of a fight and more of a very violent slapstick comedy routine. Vex'tor would attack with bone-crushing force. Tommy would accidentally avoid it through some combination of clumsiness and panic, and then both of them would look surprised that he was still alive. This is getting ridiculous, Vex'tor growled after his latest punch had missed by inches when Tommy slipped on what appeared to be absolutely nothing. Hold still and die with honor. I'm trying. Tommy gasped, currently hiding behind one of the arena's decorative pillars. But my body seems to have other ideas. Through his earpiece, he could hear Zara frantically typing. Tommy, I've been analyzing the combat footage. Your movement patterns are completely random, but they're also somehow perfectly timed to avoid Vex'tor's attacks. It's like your subconscious is predicting his moves. That's great, Tommy said, diving to avoid another swipe from Vex'tor's claws. Too bad my subconscious forgot to include a plan for actually winning this thing. Vex'tor had stopped chasing him and was now standing in the center of the arena, his chest heaving with exertion and frustration. Enough of this mockery. You run and hide like a frightened animal, bringing shame upon your entire species. Hey, that's not fair, Tommy protested, poking his head out from behind his pillar. I'm bringing shame upon my species with style and creativity. You call this cowardice creative? I call it survival. And yes, I'm very creative at it. Watch this. Tommy demonstrated by accidentally triggering one of the arena's cleaning drones, which immediately began chasing him around the arena while spraying industrial-strength disinfectant. Vex'tor watched this display with the expression of someone whose faith in the universe had been fundamentally shaken. What is wrong with your species? How did you ever manage to leave your home planet? Very carefully and with lots of safety equipment, Tommy replied, now running from both Vex'tor and the malfunctioning cleaning drone. That's when something strange began to happen. Tommy's panic, which had been building steadily throughout the fight, suddenly reached some kind of critical mass. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears, his vision was starting to tunnel, and he felt like his entire nervous system was about to short-circuit. Tommy, Zara's voice was urgent in his earpiece. Your biometric readings are off the charts. Something's happening to you. Tommy could feel it too. His muscles were starting to twitch with excess energy, his reflexes were sharpening, and somewhere deep in his brain, something that had been dormant his entire life was slowly waking up. I feel weird, he gasped. Vex'tor had finally cornered him near the arena's main entrance. Nowhere left to run, little human. Face your death with whatever dignity you can muster. The War-Prime raised both fists above his head, ready to deliver a crushing blow that would end the fight once and for all. Tommy looked up at him, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, he wasn't thinking about running away. He was thinking about hitting back. You know what? Tommy said, his voice strangely calm. I'm really getting tired of you calling me little. That's when something in his genetic code decided it was time to wake up from its 20-year nap. What happened next would be debated by xenobiologists, combat analysts, and philosophers for the next century. Security footage from 17 different angles would be studied frame by frame. Physicists would write papers trying to explain how the laws of motion had apparently decided to take a coffee break. Tommy's fist connected with War-Prime Vex'tor's solar plexus with a sound like thunder being strangled by a hurricane. The impact created a visible shockwave that radiated outward from the point of contact, shattering every piece of glass in the arena and causing the transparent aluminum walls to develop an intricate spiderweb of cracks. Vex'tor's eyes went wide with shock, then pain, then something that might have been respect right before he launched backward through the air like a very large, very surprised missile. The 8-foot-tall Apex warrior sailed across the arena, through the reinforced back wall, through the corridor behind it, through the Academy's main structural support beam, and finally came to rest embedded 3 feet deep in the outer hull of the building. The impact registered as a minor earthquake on seismic equipment in the next star system over. Tommy stood in the center of the arena, his fist still extended, staring at the Tommy-shaped hole in the wall with an expression of complete bewilderment. Did I do that? He asked. The silence was deafening. Not just in the arena, but across the entire Apex fleet hovering above the Academy. Every alien warrior, every ship's computer, every communication system had gone completely quiet, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Through his earpiece, Tommy could hear Zara's fingers flying across her keyboard. Tommy, I'm reading massive energy signatures from your position. Whatever just happened, it registered on sensors 3 systems away. The Galactic Seismic Monitoring Network thinks there's been a tectonic shift on Earth. Is Vex'tor okay? Tommy asked, genuine concern in his voice. Define okay, came Sergeant Krex's voice over the general communication channel. He's alive, but he's also unconscious and currently wearing the Academy's east wall as a fashion accessory. Tommy looked around the arena. The spectators were all pressed against the outer walls, staring at him with expressions ranging from awe to terror to complete confusion. Several of the alien diplomats in the viewing section appeared to be updating their threat assessment databases in real time. So Tommy said into the silence, "Did I pass my combat assessment?" Before anyone could answer, the main communication array crackled to life. Voices from across the galaxy began flooding in simultaneously. This is the Centauri Republic. We formally request a non-aggression pact with Earth. Zephyrian Empire here. We're prepared to offer tribute in exchange for peaceful relations. The Rigel Consortium would like to negotiate immediate trade agreements. Please don't hurt us, came a small voice from somewhere in the Andromeda sector. Tommy blinked. What's happening? Zara's voice was filled with a mixture of amazement and terror. Tommy, the entire galactic communication network is lighting up. Every major civilization in the galaxy just watched you punch the most feared warrior in known space through a reinforced wall. They're all trying to surrender to humanity. But I don't want anyone to surrender, Tommy protested. I just wanted to not die horribly. From the Vex'tor-shaped hole in the wall came a weak groan. The War-Prime was apparently regaining consciousness, which everyone agreed was probably a good sign for galactic stability. A team of medics was carefully extracting him from the wall while he mumbled something about impossible humans. And need to update combat protocols. Commandant Torres's voice echoed through the arena's public address system. Ladies, gentlemen, and representatives of various alien species. I think we can all agree that Cadet Harrison has successfully demonstrated his combat capabilities. Does this mean I passed? Tommy asked hopefully. Son, I think you just redefined the grading scale. Captain Rex Sterling, who had been watching from the medical bay where his ego was being treated for severe bruising, limped into the arena. Tommy, that was incredible. You've got to teach me that technique. How did you generate that much kinetic energy? What's your training regimen? Can I be your sidekick? Tommy stared at him. My sidekick? Everyone's going to want to know the man who trained under the legendary Tommy Harrison. But you're Rex Sterling. You're perfect at everything. I was perfect at everything, Sterling corrected, his eyes shining with hero worship. But you just punched a hole in the space-time continuum. I'm not even in the same league. Tommy looked around the arena again. The cleanup crews were already working on the walls, the medics were checking Vex'tor's vital signs, and somewhere in the background, he could hear the sounds of several galactic governments trying to outbid each other for Earth's friendship. Zara, he said into his communicator, what exactly is a berserker gene? Still researching, came a reply, but based on what just happened, I think it's humanity's genetic ace in the hole. A combat enhancement that only activates under extreme stress, turning ordinary humans into unstoppable fighting machines. Tommy considered this. So I'm not actually terrible at fighting? Tommy, I don't think anyone in the galaxy is going to call you terrible at anything ever again. From the medical area, Vex'tor's voice drifted over, weak but respectful. A human warrior. I salute your strength. The Apex Consortium withdraws from Earth space. We are not worthy to face such power. Tommy waved awkwardly. Thanks. Sorry about the wall thing. He was beginning to suspect that his life had just gotten very, very complicated. 3 months later, Tommy Harrison discovered that being the most feared human in the galaxy came with a surprising number of administrative responsibilities. Sir, the Andromedan Trade Federation is here for their appointment, announced his new secretary, a remarkably efficient robot that Zara had programmed to handle his increasingly ridiculous schedule. They're offering to name their capital city after you in exchange for a non-aggression pact. Tommy looked up from his breakfast, which had been interrupted by similar requests 17 times already that morning. Can we just tell them I'm not interested in having cities named after me? The whole thing makes me uncomfortable. Sir, there are currently 47 planets, 12 space stations, and one small moon named Harrison in your honor. The Galactic Cartography Commission has requested that you choose a different name for future dedications to avoid confusion. This is insane, Tommy muttered, then looked at his schedule for the day. What else do we have? At 1000 hours, the Rigel Consortium wants to discuss a defensive alliance. At 1100, the Zephyrian Empire is presenting you with their highest military honor. At noon, 3 different alien governments are bidding for the rights to publish your autobiography. And at 1400 hours, you have a diplomatic lunch with the Galactic Council. What about my actual classes? Sir, Commandant Torres has exempted you from all coursework on the grounds that you've already exceeded the curriculum's objectives by several orders of magnitude. Tommy slumped in his chair. All he'd wanted was to pass his combat assessment and maybe get assigned to a nice, quiet posting somewhere safe. Instead, he'd accidentally become the most diplomatically important person in human history. His communicator buzzed. Tommy, you need to see this, came Zara's voice. She sounded like she was trying not to laugh. Tommy made his way to the Academy's main library, where Zara had set up what looked like mission control for monitoring galactic communications. Screens showed news feeds from across the galaxy, diplomatic channels, and what appeared to be several alien social media networks. Look at this, Zara said, pointing to one of the screens. It showed Sergeant Krex being interviewed by a Centauri news crew. His scales were a satisfied shade of green, and he was wearing what looked suspiciously like an expensive suit. Yes, I always knew Harrison had potential, Krex was saying. You don't train a warrior of his caliber without recognizing the signs. My new book, How I Trained the Destroyer of Worlds, Advanced Combat Techniques for Turning Weaklings into Weapons of Mass Destruction, will be available next week. Tommy stared at the screen. He's writing a book about training me? It gets better, Zara said, switching to another feed. This one showed Captain Rex Sterling leading what appeared to be a martial arts class. Sterling's opened a combat academy. He's teaching something he calls the Harrison method to paying students. What's the Harrison method? As far as I can tell, it involves falling down a lot and apologizing while accidentally hitting things. Tommy watched Sterling demonstrate a technique that looked suspiciously like controlled panic. This is getting out of hand. Tommy, look at this, Zara said, pulling up another screen. The entire galactic economy has shifted. Humanity's stock has literally gone through the roof. Earth's been invited to join every major alliance, trade federation, and mutual defense pact in known space. We've gone from a minor backwater planet to the galaxy's newest superpower overnight. All because I punched one guy? You didn't just punch him, Tommy. You rewrote the rules. Every military in the galaxy is trying to figure out how to deal with the possibility that any human could potentially have the same capabilities you do. Tommy's communicator chimed with an urgent message. Sir, came his secretary's voice, we have a priority communication from the Galactic Council. The main screen flickered to life, showing the council chamber where representatives from hundreds of species gathered to discuss galactic politics. The current speaker, a dignified insectoid from the Tau Ceti system, addressed Tommy directly. Honored Human Harrison, the speaker began, the Galactic Council wishes to offer you a position as supreme mediator for all interspecies conflicts. Your reputation for decisive problem-solving makes you uniquely qualified for the role. Tommy looked at Zara, who shrugged. It's a good job. Excellent benefits, diplomatic immunity, and you'd basically be the galaxy's referee. What would I have to do? Mostly just show up to meetings, the speaker continued. Your mere presence has proven sufficient to resolve most disputes. The Rigel-Centauri border conflict ended when both sides realized you might get involved. The Andromedan succession crisis resolved itself when we mentioned you were monitoring the situation. Tommy considered this. So I'd be getting paid to intimidate people just by existing? Essentially, yes. That's actually not a bad deal. His contemplation was interrupted by his secretary's voice. Sir, urgent message from the Academy cafeteria. They're requesting your immediate assistance with a diplomatic incident. Tommy sighed. What now? 10 minutes later, he found himself standing in the cafeteria, looking at what could only be described as a very strange standoff. On one side of the room, a delegation of alien diplomats was arguing with the lunch staff about the day's menu. On the other side, Captain Sterling was trying to demonstrate advanced combat techniques to a group of terrified exchange students. What seems to be the problem? Tommy asked. The head chef, a burly man named Henderson, looked relieved. These alien fellows want us to prepare some kind of traditional dish for a cultural exchange ceremony, but we don't have the right ingredients. They're getting pretty upset about it. And Sterling? Whoa. He's been trying to teach the Andromedan students something he calls Harrison-style crisis management, but I think he's mostly just scaring them. Tommy looked at the chaos around him and realized that this was probably going to be his life from now on. Everywhere he went, people would either want to worship him, learn from him, or make deals with him. He'd accidentally become a legend, and legends apparently came with a lot of paperwork. Okay, he said, rolling up his sleeves. Let's sort this out. 2 hours later, the diplomatic crisis had been resolved. Sterling had been gently discouraged from teaching combat techniques to nervous aliens, and Tommy had somehow managed to mediate a minor trade dispute between two species that had been arguing for 3 centuries. As he walked back to his quarters, his communicator buzzed one more time. Sir, came his secretary's voice, the President of Earth would like to speak with you about establishing a new Department of Galactic Relations, with you as the director. Tommy stopped walking and looked up at the stars, visible through the Academy's transparent dome. Somewhere out there, entire civilizations were probably having emergency meetings about humanity's sudden rise to galactic prominence, all because he'd gotten scared and punched someone really, really hard. You know what? He said into the communicator. Set up the meeting, but make sure they know.